Hey, welcome. It's great to have you. So since my last video, I've been working super hard on my roguelike, which is now officially titled Seas of Rebellion. There's tons of new stuff to show off, but today I'd like to show you how I made the game's first boss. Before we get started though, I'm also very happy to announce that you can now wishlist the game on Steam. So the game is going to be split up into 4 distinct regions, each with their own unique environment, enemies, and bosses. The idea for this first region is that your home has been continually ransacked by bandits, and you take it upon yourself to defend your home and seek them out. You'll travel across many different islands fighting groups of bandits before finally arriving upon their home base. And here, you'll face the game's first boss, the Bandit Captain. Now I knew that I wanted this first boss to be a ship rather than some crazy kraken or monster or something like that, although I do plan on creating something like that for the next region. But for the bandits, I want there to be some sort of formidable leader that later on I can use as an important character in the game's story. I want them to be fierce, powerful, skilled, and rough around the edges, just like any bandit should be. I'm not really sure what the actual character for the bandit leader themselves will end up looking like, but I know what the ship is going to look like, because the first thing I did to make this thing was plop down a big ship into the world, scale it up a bit, and then quickly I realized it was really boring because it's just a normal enemy. So the next step was to add some unique attacks. One thing I knew right away that I wanted to play around with was some sort of area of effect attack. I really enjoy boss fights where maneuvering around the arena is part of the fight itself. It helps give a sense that the area in which the fight takes place in is completely hostile to you as the player, and that the boss has complete command over its own environment and is able to use it against you. My solution for this was creating this lobbing explosive attack, where the Bandit Captain will shoot out a random number of projectiles that scatter across the arena and deal massive damage if the player is in their explosion range. But because this is such a powerful attack, it was important to design it in such a way that the fight still felt fair. So I added a flashing circle that corresponds to the actual explosion radius of each of the attacks. This way you know where the attack is going to be coming and you have enough time to avoid it before you actually suffer the consequences. An important detail I wanted to make sure I implemented here was for the lobs to actually, lob rather than just moving straight towards their target like the normal cannonballs do. And I'll be honest, trying to make this thing work made me feel really dumb. My solution was ultimately pretty simple. I've got the lobs traveling straight to their target point along the X and the Z axis, but their height along the Y axis is dependent on a little parabolic function. This really wasn't that complicated in the end, but sitting there for 30 minutes as a grown adult, slapping different values onto a graphing calculator, just trying to make y equals x squared look the way I wanted it to was humbling. Anyway, I think the results turned out pretty well. I'll be honest, the lob attack was really the main thing I wanted to implement with this boss and the main idea that I had, but I needed to add a bit more to keep the fight interesting. So the next thing I added was this charging attack. At the start of the attack, the boss will stop whatever it's doing and quickly rotate towards the player. Then once it's locked onto your position, the ship will quickly charge straight for you, dealing huge amounts of damage if you don't get out of the way in time. The attack is pretty easy to avoid, but because of the way I've got the enemy cannons set up, the boss will shoot off a barrage of cannonballs as it charges past you, making it much more difficult to avoid than just the charge itself. It's basically just doing a nautical drive-by. Lastly, I set up a simple minion spawn attack for the boss. The spawn events are triggered whenever the boss's health reaches a certain milestone, so whenever the boss gets down to 75%, 50%, and 25% of its health, it'll spawn 1, 2, or 3 minions, which add a little bit of extra chaos to the fight. The spawn minions are also a higher level than any of the other the players face up to this point. I'm hoping this will create a moment where players go, "Oh, these are even tougher than the ones I already killed. I might die." Another aspect of designing this boss was incorporating the mechanics I'd already set up for the regular enemies. The way I've set up the basic enemy cannons is that they essentially will just fire whenever the player enters a certain angle threshold, and I was able to reuse this for the boss, although with some important modifications. The first thing I did was actually greatly increase the number of cannons I originally had on the boss. Most of my basic enemies just shoot directly out of their sides, which gives the player some time to run away or kill them before they're able to turn and face you to shoot. For the boss though, I added cannons to the front and the back of the ship, so now there's always a cannon that can attack you regardless of the direction it's facing. And this was cool at first, but as I was testing this, it became pretty clear that having no safe angle from the boss was a bit unfair. So to compromise, I actually ended up just lowering the speed of the cannonballs that the boss fires out, so you have a bit more time to dodge them. So now, with these modifications, the player not only has to manage damaging the boss, along with avoiding its charge attacks and its minion spawns, as well as navigating around an arena that turns into a hellscape of bombs half the time, but now you've also got to dodge an onslaught of cannonballs that constantly are spewing out of the boss. On their own, each of these mechanics is pretty simple, but together they make for a really challenging fight. As I mentioned earlier, I've done a ton of work on so many other aspects of the game, and this will be things that I touch on in the next video, but I currently have the gameplay loop fully working, and honestly it's been such a joy to test the game and reach the new boss and kill it. I've had moments while playtesting where I'll make it to the boss super low on health from all the previous levels, and I'm just barely able to beat it. And those moments were really fun. It may seem like a really simple thing, and it kind of is, but knowing that my game that I've been spending so much time working on is actually able to create those fun, tense moments of gameplay is really encouraging. I still have so much work to do, but I'm really looking forward to it. I feel like I've got a project with a lot of potential here. So yeah, anyway, that's my first boss. As a reminder, you can now wishlist Seas of Rebellion on Steam, which I would very much appreciate, and I'd like to thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.